The first time Aaron Cade stood beneath the crystal canopy of the Celestial Archives, he felt as though the very galaxy was staring back at him. The domed overhead lattice shimmered with captured starlight, millions of luminous threads suspended in geometric harmony, each strand representing a recorded event somewhere in known space. He paused in the entrance hall, letting the glow bathe over him. A century ago, the archives had been built as a testament to the unity of the human frontier, a place intended to inspire reflection on the long march from Earth to the worlds beyond. Instead, the grand edifice now served as a reminder of how fragile that unity had become. Frontier governors argued, corporate fleets clashed over mineral rights, and whispers circulated that alien civilizations watched from the void, assessing whether humanity had earned its seat among the elder species or whether it remained a volatile experiment left to burn itself out. Aaron had never cared much for politics, but he cared deeply for being useful, and the archives needed people with patience, curiosity, and stubborn loyalty, three things he possessed in abundance, according to his mentor. That mentor, senior archivist Oren Telvin, had been the one to bring him here all those years ago, to stand beneath this same canopy and describe the calling that came with tending the galaxy's memory. So standing here again on his return from an 18-month outer-border expedition, Aaron allowed himself a moment to feel that same pride, even if the sensation was tempered by exhaustion and a creeping sense that something was fundamentally wrong, because he was not supposed to return alone. His team had numbered 12 when they set out. Now he was the only one walking back under living starlight. He stepped forward, and the soft hum of the star lattice shifted, as though recognizing him. The archives always felt alive in small, uncanny ways. Scholars had long suspected that the original designers wove machine cognition into the ancient architecture, though no one had proof. The builders had left no notes, no declarations of intent, only the structure itself, and the inexplicable way it responded to particular archivists as if they were old friends. Aaron found comfort in that, in knowing that some intelligence, however subtle, acknowledged his return. But the comfort ended the moment a figure emerged from a side corridor, walking toward him with rigid determination. It was a person he recognized at once despite the years. Mara Jelen, operations overseer of the Central District, a woman whose measured calm once made her seem unshakable. Today she did not look unshakable. Today she looked like someone bracing for impact. "You're earlier than we expected," she said, voice steady, but eyes scanning him for injuries. "We received your preliminary report, but," she hesitated, "the detail was sparse." "I sent what I could from the outpost," Aaron replied. His throat tightened as memory surged, a flash of collapsing metal, a ripple of distorted sky, a scream that didn't quite sound human. "We lost transmission stability." Mara exhaled and nodded, motioning for him to walk with her. "Senior Archivist Oren is waiting in his chambers. He requested you immediately upon arrival." Aaron followed her through the long central corridor, where holographs of pivotal events rotated slowly in suspended frames, treaties signed, first contacts attempted, extinct civilizations reconstructed through archaeological inference. He used to admire these displays. Now every rotation felt threatening, as though the galaxy's history spun too quickly for anyone to maintain balance. As Mara led him deeper into the heart of the archives, he noticed that fewer scholars than usual populated the research bays. The air felt thinner too, tense, anticipatory. "Something has changed here," he said quietly, not wanting to stop walking but needing to acknowledge what his instincts told him. "Several things," Mara answered, "but Oren will explain better than I can." They stopped before a circular door engraved with ancient spiral motifs. Mara placed her palm against the central sigil, and the design folded away into itself, allowing the doorway to open. Warm amber light spilled out, along with the soft scent of preserved vellum and ionized crystal, Oren's preferred atmosphere blend. Aran stepped inside, and the door closed behind him. The chamber's interior resembled the study of an old philosopher rather than the workspace of a high-ranking archivist. Shelves were carved directly into the stone walls, filled with printed books and crystalline codices. A single wide table stood in the center, cluttered with star charts, magnetic ink sheets, and half-assembled analysis devices whose purposes Aran could only guess at. Behind the table stood Orin himself, older than when Aran last saw him, but still possessing the same sharp gaze that could slice through layers of uncertainty like a scalpel through cloth. "You survived," Orin said, voice hushed but fierce with emotion. "Thank the wandering stars." Aran wanted to smile, but the weight in his chest prevented it. "Barely, and not alone." He paused. "Not entirely." Orin's eyes tightened. "Come here, sit. We have much to discuss, and not nearly enough time." Aran crossed the room and sat in the high-backed chair opposite his mentor. For a brief moment, the warmth of the chamber made him feel safe enough to breathe deeply, but safety was an illusion he didn't dare cling to. "What happened out there?" Orin asked. Aran closed his eyes, and the memories returned with brutal clarity. The expedition had begun like many others, a survey of outer rim anomalies detected by long-range sensors. Most such anomalies were natural, pulsar distortions, gravitational echoes, or the remnants of evaporating microsingularities. But this one had been different from the start. It behaved like a signal, but not one produced by human technology. It shifted in patterns too complex for random cosmic noise, yet too fluid for mechanical communication. The team had been intrigued, enthusiastic. Ambition often grew wild on the frontier, like a vine reaching for stars it could never touch. "We located the anomaly above the fourth moon of a gas giant," Aran began. "At first it was subtle, a sort of vibrational resonance in the magnetic field, but the closer we got, the more the signal fluctuated. It seemed to react to us, almost like it was observing." Orin interlaced his fingers. "Not the first time we've received hints of observation from beyond known channels, but something else happened, didn't it?" Aran nodded. "We established a field station on the moon's surface. For the first 2 days, everything worked as expected, but on the third day, the sky fractured." Orin blinked slowly. "Fractured." "It looked like a tear," Aran said, struggling to find human language for something that felt fundamentally alien. "Not a storm, not a spatial rift like the ones formed by hyperfold engines. It was layered, like overlapping sheets of reality sliding across each other. And from that tear came a presence, not a creature, not a machine, something that moved with intention but no defined form." Orin did not speak. He waited. "Our readings went wild," Aran continued. "Half the team lost consciousness instantly. Those of us who stayed awake heard impressions, not voices. More like concepts pushed into our thoughts. And then the presence touched the machinery and everything began to fail. I tried to evacuate them, I tried, but..." His voice cracked. He swallowed hard. "I don't remember escaping. I only remember waking up in the shuttle alone, drifting out of the system with the anomaly collapsing behind me." For a long moment, the only sound in the chamber was the faint crackle of Orin's tabletop iron lamp. Then the archivist said, "You were touched." Aran stiffened. "I don't know what it did. Perhaps nothing, perhaps something that hasn't yet manifested." Orin leaned back in his chair. "This explains why the archives reacted when you entered. The lattice senses disturbances in informational coherence. You are carrying more than memory." Aran shivered. "I don't feel different. No one ever does until the difference becomes undeniable," Orin said. He rose and walked to a tall shelf, retrieving a hexagonal crystalline tablet. This object was recovered from a ruin in the Perseid Verge. The inscriptions describe a species older than any we've encountered, one that supposedly vanished after a great calamity. I dismissed much of it as myth until a week ago when a signal similar to the one you encountered brushed against our outermost detection nets." Aran's breath caught. "You think it's the same presence?" "I think," Orin said carefully, "that something once believed dead is stirring, and I think your experience is the first direct contact any human has ever had with it. Aaron rubbed his temples. Why would it destroy the team but let me live? Orin hesitated, then answered, because it wants something. Aaron felt cold. From me. From humanity, Orin corrected softly. But it may use you as its conduit. A low tremor vibrated through the floor, subtle but unmistakable. Orin's gaze snapped to the ceiling. It has begun, he whispered. What has? Come with me. Orin moved to the doorway, and Aaron followed him into the corridor. The star lattice overhead flickered erratically, threads spasming like a web shaken by an unseen force. Mara appeared at the far end of the hall, speaking urgently into her comms device, then rushing toward them. What's happening? Aaron called out. She answered breathlessly, a surge in the lattice core. It's rewriting its own architecture. We've never seen anything like it. Orin turned to Aaron with a grim expression. It's responding to your presence. That doesn't make sense. It does if the presence that touched you is trying to communicate through it. The tremor intensified. Aaron felt pressure behind his eyes, a rising swell of tension that made vision blur. His pulse quickened. Orin, I think it's inside my thoughts. Fight it, Orin urged. Anchor yourself, describe what you feel. It's not words, Aaron said, gripping the wall for balance. It's directional, like it's pointing towards something, no, drawing something in. Mara shouted, we have to evacuate the central chambers. But before any of them could move, the star lattice emitted a deep, resonant tone. Threads of light flared in violent waves, cascading from the ceiling in streams that gathered above the corridor's midpoint, forming a spiraling vortex of luminescent energy. The air erupted with heat and pressure. Sparks cascaded across the floor. Aaron staggered backward as the vortex contracted, pulling reality inward like a great inhalation. Orin grabbed Aaron's shoulder. Look at me, stay present. But Aaron barely heard him through the rising crescendo in his mind. Something pushed out, overwhelming his senses. The vortex snapped downward like a striking serpent, slamming into the floor. Yet instead of shattering stone, it unfolded into a shape. Humanoid, radiant, translucent, and unmistakably watching him. Mara froze in terror. Orin whispered, impossible. Aaron felt the presence settle into his awareness like a hand closing around a trembling bird. Then the figure spoke, not aloud, but directly into his mind. We remember you, and through you we remember your kind. The cycle turns, prepare. The figure dissolved into cascading light. The vortex vanished. The lattice dimmed. Aaron collapsed to his knees, breath ragged. Orin knelt beside him. Did it harm you? Aaron shook his head. No, it warned me. Orin's expression darkened. What is coming? Aaron lifted his gaze, feeling the presence's echo still reverberating through his bones. I think, he said, something ancient is waking, and it knows humanity is here. The archives descended into controlled chaos in the hours following the manifestation, though no one except Aaron, Mara, and Orin understood its true severity. Word spread through the inner circles that a lattice cascade had occurred, something unprecedented in its intensity, and that measures were being taken to prevent damage to the core memory structures. Scholars rushed across the main walkways, some clutching data slates, others frantically discussing anomalies in their workspaces that mirrored the corridor phenomenon. Aaron watched them move with a sense of dislocation, as if observing them from a few steps outside the world they occupied. The presence's final words gnawed at him, sharp with implication. Something ancient is waking. Prepare. The phrase meant nothing and everything, and he understood it no more than the figure's sudden appearance. It had seen him. No, recognized him, as though its awareness had lodged itself in the space between his thoughts during the outpost incident, waiting for an opportunity to make its intentions known. Orin had taken charge, barking orders to reroute energy flows and isolate lattice substructures before any further cascade events compromised the archive's deep historical banks. Mara coordinated with security personnel to establish a perimeter around the area where the vortex had appeared, though the last thing she expected was that the phenomenon might return. The lattice was many things, mysterious, powerful, infused with ancient intelligence, but it had never acted with anything that could be called malice or intent. Today it had, and no one knew if the threat had passed or merely paused. Aderin remained in Orin's chambers until the archivist returned, and when he did, his expression bore a mixture of awe and dread that Aderin had never before seen on the man's face. "It's stabilizing," Orin said, closing the door behind him. The flares stopped entirely. The vortex left no residual stress pattern in the substrates. It's as if the event never occurred. Aderin exhaled shakily. "Except that it did." "It did," Orin said gravely, "and its message to you, if message is the right word, suggests the phenomenon wasn't a random eruption, it was deliberate." Aderin leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I need to understand why it singled me out. I was just part of a survey team. I didn't do anything special." Orin paced behind his desk. "You were the only one who survived an encounter that wiped out every other trained mind in your group. Not only survived, but returned with no detectable injuries. You told me the presence touched the machinery, but I suspect it touched more than that." Aderin swallowed. "I've felt strange since the outpost, only slightly, barely noticeable, like I'm carrying a breath I can never fully release." "That," Orin said, "may be the residue of whatever interacted with you, and now that resonance has attracted something that appears to exist on the boundary between physical and informational reality. So what do we do?" "We prepare," Orin said, just as it warned. Mara entered then, her posture stiff, but her expression sharper than before. She shut the door with a decisive motion. "Security scans show no anomalies in the surrounding floors. Whatever occurred, it left no traceable signature. But the comm stations are being inundated from across the frontier. Multiple outposts report distortions similar to the one your team detected." Aderin straightened. "How many?" "7 so far," Mara said. "Likely more as reports continue to come in, all in different sectors." "All within the last hour." Orin stopped pacing. "It has begun." Aderin felt his heartbeat quicken. "This is coordinated." "Or conditional," Orin said, "triggered by an awakening mechanism we don't yet understand." Mara folded her arms. "We need actionable information, not metaphors. You said the presence communicated something to Aderin. That implies intention, possibly strategy." Orin nodded. "Then we must assume this entity, whatever form it possesses, is not merely observing, it is positioning itself." "Positioning for what?" Mara demanded. Aderin answered before thinking. "Contact, confrontation, maybe both." Mara turned to him. "What makes you say that?" "The presence didn't feel hostile," Aderin said. "Not exactly, but it felt immense. As if I were a single thought passing through a much greater mind. It didn't destroy me because it needed something, maybe insight into humanity, maybe a conduit for communication. But I don't think it will stop at a single manifestation. Then we need to deduce its intentions before it decides we aren't worth the effort," Mara said. "Or worse, before it decides we are." Orin placed the hexagonal crystalline tablet from earlier on the table. The ruin that yielded this artifact was once part of a network of way stations scattered across the Perseid Verge. According to its inscriptions, the species that created these stations vanished after a catastrophic encounter with something they called the Veiled Constellation. "Sounds poetic," Mara muttered. "It wasn't meant poetically," Orin replied. "The phrase is used repeatedly in contexts describing an adversary or an overwhelming natural force, but the final passages describe an awakening cycle tied to deep cosmic rhythms, something dormant rising when certain stars align." Aderin felt a chill. "The presence told me the cycle turns." "Yes." Orin tapped the tablet. "This may be our only clue to its meaning." Mara leaned closer, examining the etched symbols. "We should send this to the Cognitive Linguistics Division." "I already have," Orin said, "but their translation algorithms have struggled with this script for decades. We don't have time to wait for breakthroughs." "Then we need another path," Mara said, "something more direct." Aderin hesitated. "There is something else. During the manifestation, I felt impressions, faint images at the edge of consciousness, shapes that didn't quite form into words. Maybe they're tied to what touched me at the outpost. Orin's eyes widened. If you retained even fragmented impressions, they could be crucial. Try recalling them. Aaron closed his eyes. The pressure behind his thoughts returned, soft but insistent. He focused, letting the memory of the presence wash over him. The room's ambient sounds dampened, thinning into the background. Slowly, faint impressions bubbled up, curved structures suspended in darkness, sweeping arcs like colossal wings carved from starlight, and between them something vast, something beating like a pulse through the void. I see structures, Aaron murmured, not physical, more like gateways. They're arranged around a central point, and there's movement, but not mechanical movement, more like shifting states. A cycle, can you describe the central point? Orin asked. It's like a heart, Aaron said, not living, more like a node, a convergence point drawing in energy. It feels ancient, buried. Orin exchanged a troubled glance with Mara. This matches several segments from the tablet. There are references to nodal constructs positioned at key stellar intersections. Mara frowned. You think these gateways or nodes are activating? I think, Orin said, that whatever has awakened is tied to them, and if Aaron is receiving impressions, the presence may be trying to show us what's coming. Aaron opened his eyes. There's more. I felt a sense of choice, as if humanity is being measured. Measured how? Mara asked. I don't know, Aaron said. But the presence didn't seem certain of what we would do. I don't think it sees us as a threat yet, but that could change. Before anyone could respond, the chamber lights flickered again, not violently this time, but with a sweeping pulse that moved through the room like a wave. Orin stiffened. Mara reached reflexively for the comm at her belt. Aaron felt the presence stir at the edge of his awareness, distant, observing, no longer overlapping his thoughts but attentive. The comm device crackled as a voice came through, urgent. Overseer Mara, report to the Eastern Observatory immediately. You need to see this. Mara acknowledged and turned to the others. You're coming with me. The Eastern Observatory was a cavernous structure stacked with telescopic arrays, quantum horizon scanners, and deep space imaging grids. Normally, the chamber hummed with quiet activity, but now it was thronged with personnel staring toward the central display, where a massive projection of local star sectors rotated slowly. A bright red pulse blinked across several cluster points at once, each pulse accompanied by a shifting algorithmic pattern crawling across the display's edges. What are we looking at? Mara asked. A technician turned, face pale. Signals, Overseer. Identical resonance patterns matching the fluctuations in the archive's lattice core. They're appearing at multiple star systems simultaneously. How many? Mara demanded. 12 confirmed, the technician said. Possibly more. Locations? Orin pressed. The technician gestured toward the projection. Outer territories mostly, remote sectors, but their alignment. Look at this overlay. He activated an additional layer tracing thin lines between the resonance points. One line connected, then a second, then a third. Soon a geometric pattern emerged, intricate, symmetrical, vast. Orin inhaled sharply. That's impossible. Aaron didn't know what he was looking at, not at first. But the moment he did, something inside him tightened. It was the pattern from his impressions, the giant curving structures, the nodal configuration. And now it was appearing in real space, not as a vision, but as an unfolding reality. It's the gateways, Aaron whispered. Mara shook her head. Gateways to what? Aaron answered softly. To something older than anything humanity has ever faced. As the geometric formation continued to assemble itself across the star map, Orin stepped closer, scrutinizing the alignment with the intensity of a man watching prophecy unfold. If this pattern completes, the resonance could trigger a phase shift across the connected sectors. A phase shift, Mara repeated. What does that mean for inhabited worlds? Unknown, Orin said, but ancient accounts describe the veiled constellation as capable of restructuring entire regions of space. If these constructs are part of that mechanism, Aaron felt the presence's echo pulse again, stronger now. It was not speaking, not directly, but watching, waiting, measuring. What does it want? Aaron said aloud, though the question was more for himself than the room. Orin turned to him. You're the closest link we have to understanding its intentions. I don't know how to reach it, Aaron said. I don't even know if it hears me. You must try, Orin said, because if these gateways complete their cycle, humanity may be facing something far beyond our capacity to confront. The projection dimmed suddenly as the resonance points flared. Multiple clusters pulsed at once in perfect synchrony. Gasps rippled through the observatory. It's accelerating, the technician whispered. Mara's jaw tightened. Can we communicate with any of the affected outposts? No, the technician said. All channels are silent. Aaron's pulse thundered in his ears. The presence swelled at the edge of his consciousness, not invading, not controlling, but undeniably there. He drew a breath, closed his eyes, and spoke. If you're listening, what do you want humanity to do? No one else in the room moved. The silence stretched. And then Aaron felt the answer not in words, but in a single overwhelming impression. Choose. His eyes opened. He exhaled sharply. It wants us to choose, he said, but I don't know what choice it means. Orin stepped closer. Then we must learn, quickly, before this awakening completes. Mara turned back to the projection. Because if we choose wrong, this entire map becomes a graveyard. The resonance points pulsed again, brighter, as if agreeing. Something ancient was waking, and the galaxy would not remain the same. The echoes of the resonance pulses lingered long after the observatory had fallen into a tense, buzzing hush. Aaron stood near the center display, staring at the forming geometric pattern as if willing it to slow, but the pale strands of aligned star sectors continued their dance, drawing lines across the void like a colossal architect sketching ancient blueprints over a living galaxy. Around him, the observatory staff whispered theories, fears, and urgent calculations, but most of their words faded beneath the heavier weight of his thoughts. The presence had given him a single instruction: choose. Just one word, delivered without context, as if expecting him to grasp the significance on instinct. But instinct, for the first time in his life, offered nothing. Humanity was balanced on the precipice of some cosmic renewal or catastrophe, and a being of unfathomable age had decided the burden of interpretation rested on his shoulders alone. Mara moved to his side, her gaze fixed on the projection. She said nothing at first, simply studying his expression. Finally, she asked, "Does the presence feel stronger now?" Aaron shook his head. "Not stronger, closer. Like it's waiting for something specific, something I haven't realized yet. Then we need to make sure you have the space to find it," Mara said. "You can't do that if half the observatory keeps trying to extract theories from you." He managed a weak smile. "I appreciate that, but I don't think privacy is going to make this easier." "It might make it possible," Mara countered. "You're not a machine, Aaron. You're a person caught in the middle of something far larger than any of us. Give yourself room to breathe." Before he could respond, Orin approached them, his expression unusually pale. "The translations team has sent a preliminary update," he said, holding up a tablet. "Not complete, but enough to raise concerns." "What kind of concerns?" Mara asked. Orin angled the tablet so they could see. Ancient glyphs flickered across the screen, overlaid with fractured translations. The inscriptions refer to the veiled constellation as a cycle shepherd, a force that ushers civilizations through predetermined phases of expansion, stagnation, collapse, and rebirth. It claims the shepherd evaluates each civilization when the cycle turns. If a civilization is deemed aligned with the natural flow, it is guided to ascend. If not, it is culled. Aaron felt a cold ripple of dread. Culled, as in destroyed, restructured, Orin said. Their word suggests the civilization's matter, culture, and informational signatures are drawn into the gateways and remade into something new, something alien. In their view, destruction isn't destruction. "It's correction," Mara muttered a low curse. "And this shepherd just woke up." "Or returned," Orin said. or recovered enough influence to resume its task. The species who carved this tablet believed they were tested and found wanting. Their disappearance may not have been natural. Aaron looked again at the projection. The geometric pattern's lines sharpened, crossing with eerie precision. It gave me one word: choose. If it expects humanity to prove itself, why speak to me? Why not communicate directly through the lattice or through our technology? Maybe it can't, Orin said. Or maybe it won't. The ancient records suggest it doesn't interact with civilizations equally. It selects an intermediary. Mara raised an eyebrow. It chooses someone to represent an entire species? That's insane. Only insane by human standards, Orin replied. To a being that views time in cycles of thousands of years, selecting a single mind may be more efficient than negotiating with billions. You happen to be closest to a gateway's awakening point and survived contact. That alone might qualify you in its eyes. Aaron exhaled slowly. If I'm meant to represent humanity, we're in serious trouble. Mara placed a hand on his arm, steadying. You're exactly the kind of person I'd trust to represent us. You think, you question, you want to understand before acting. There are worse qualities to bring into a conversation with a cosmic judge. Orin frowned thoughtfully. If this entity wants a choice from humanity, perhaps it expects us to understand the nature of the test, and that may involve learning more about these gateways. Mara's jaw tightened. You want to send someone to one of the active sectors. Aaron blinked. You want us to go toward them? Orin nodded. If we don't, we remain blind, and blindness is death in a situation like this. But the gateways, Mara said slowly, are appearing in sectors where stations have already gone silent. Exactly, Orin said, and silence does not always mean devastation. It could mean interference, communications distortion, or temporary spatial restructuring. If even one outpost still stands, it might have critical information. Aaron's pulse quickened. And you want me to go because the presence already knows me? That's part of it, Orin admitted, but also because you may be the only human who can perceive the gateway's effects in a more direct way. Your impressions earlier matched the ancient descriptions with uncanny precision. Mara crossed her arms. Again, you're asking one man to shoulder the weight of unknown danger because the universe tapped him on the shoulder. That doesn't sit well with me. I'm not asking, Orin said. I'm recognizing necessity. Aaron stared at the projection again. Which sector is closest? The technician answered from behind them. The nearest gateway resonance is forming near the outer edge of the Lyran corridor, just past the Helios spiral. A research station that went dark 3 hours ago. Mara let out a frustrated breath. Of course it would be the Lyran corridor. You know it? Aaron asked. A little too well, she replied. It's notorious for unpredictable gravitational eddies. Navigating it on a good day is a challenge. Navigating it during a cosmic awakening of ancient gateways might be suicide. If the presence expects a choice from us, Orin said, we cannot make it without understanding the threat. Aaron rubbed his temples, feeling the faint hum of the presence again. I'll go. Mara turned sharply. Aaron, I'll go, he repeated. Because if I don't, we face this blind, and humanity loses its only chance to show this entity who we really are. Orin nodded solemnly. We leave as soon as preparations are complete. We, Aaron echoed. Orin offered a faint smile. Did you truly think I would let you walk into the depths of an awakening cosmic construct alone? The archives have codes for dangerous retrieval missions. This qualifies, and I've trained you for years. If this is part of the cycle, then I intend to face it with you. Mara sighed, though not with resignation, with resolve. Then if the two of you go, I'm going too. Someone needs to keep you both alive long enough to learn something useful. Aaron felt a swell of gratitude. Despite the enormity of what loomed ahead, he no longer felt quite as alone. Within hours, the archives mobilized one of its long-range vessels, the Ecliptic Wanderer, an exploration craft designed for deep space analysis. Its sleek hull curved like a blade through shadow, built for endurance rather than combat. The ship stood ready on the mid-tier launch platform, its engines thrumming with restrained energy. Aran boarded first, feeling a mix of dread and determination swirl through him. The corridors smelled faintly of cold metal and ionized air, the signature scent of every expedition he had ever taken, but now it carried a different weight, as if the ship sensed its mission was unlike any before it. Mara joined him moments later, placing her gear packed neatly in the storage alcove. "If this thing tries to speak through you again," she said as she fastened her harness, "tell me immediately. I don't care how unclear it is. Anything it shares could save our lives." "I will," Aran said. "I'm not eager to face it alone in my head again." Orin arrived last, carrying several crystalline data spires and the ancient tablet. He settled into the central analysis station, murmuring, "The tablet may offer better insight once we're near an active gateway. Proximity might resonate with its stored memory structures." Aran strapped in and glanced at the forward viewport. "Then let's find out." The ecliptic wanderer lifted from the platform with a gentle hum, rising through the archive's docking chamber until the vast starfield unfurled around them. The ship's engines flared, propelling it forward into the dark sea of space. As they left the station behind, Aran felt the presence stirring again, not intrusive, but attentive, as though following their trajectory. He closed his eyes briefly, searching for meaning, but no new impressions surfaced. Only the same tense anticipation, as if the universe itself held its breath. Hours passed as they crossed the inner systems. Orin analyzed every new transmission received from the archives, but updates remained grim. More sectors were falling silent, resonance pulses intensifying. The geometric pattern expanding with frightening efficiency. By the time the ecliptic wanderer entered the Lyran corridor's outer boundary, energy readings had begun to spike. Mara adjusted the ship's stabilizers. "Gravitational eddies ahead. Hold on." The ship shuddered as invisible currents tugged at its hull. The stars outside wavered like reflections on disturbed water. Aran felt pressure gather in his skull, then release, almost like the presence adjusting its attention. "We are entering the affected region," Orin said, studying the monitors. "I'm detecting an anomalous energy field up ahead. It doesn't match any human propulsion or station architecture." Aran leaned forward. "Is it the gateway?" "Possibly," Orin said. "But its pattern is shifting too rapidly to classify." A brilliant shimmer appeared in the distance, like a tear of light stretching across the void. The ship inched closer, and the shimmer took shape, a colossal archway suspended in space, composed not of matter, but of luminous geometries twisting in synchronized motion. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Aran exhaled in awe. "That's it." Mara whispered, "It's beautiful and terrifying." Orin studied the readings. "Its structure isn't stable in the traditional sense. It exists across multiple layers of reality simultaneously. We are seeing only one facet." Aran felt the presence swell inside him again, stronger this time, resonant with the gateway. Images flashed behind his eyes, collapsing stars, spiraling currents, civilizations rising and extinguishing like sparks. He gasped. "It's speaking again, not with words, images, warning, pressure, evaluation." Mara grabbed his arm. "Aran, stay with me." He nodded, breathing hard. "It's asking what humanity will become when faced with forces beyond comprehension." Orin's expression darkened. "Our choice." The gateway pulsed. The ship vibrated. And Aran realized with a jolt that the presence wasn't waiting for them to choose someday. It expected a choice now. The first sensation that returned to Commander Aderin was pressure, as if the entire world sat on his chest. The second was heat, radiant, clinging, angry heat that licked at the edges of his awareness like the breath of a forge. He pried his eyes open and found nothing but a haze of red and drifting sparks. For several heartbeats, he could not place what he was seeing, only that everything felt wrong. Then the shape of twisted alloy above him clicked into place, and he recognized the crushed interior of the downed vessel. He remembered the explosion. He remembered the shield collapsing. He remembered the gravity well dragging them down. He remembered telling Seria to hold on. The rest had disappeared into a blur of noise and fire. Now, painfully, it returned. He groaned and pushed upward, metal scraping against his armor as he forced his way out of the mangled frame of the seat. The ship's main corridor was a wound torn open to the alien air outside. A mixture of dark smoke and pale blue mist drifted across the breach where a wall used to be. And beyond that, strangely quiet in the aftermath of destruction, was the jungle. Its vines shimmered like woven glass. Its leaves glowed with tiny pulsating veins. Its trunks twisted into shapes that might have been natural or might have been the result of deliberate biological crafting. He had no way to tell. Nothing about this place belonged to human understanding. His thoughts snapped to the others. He stumbled forward, gripping the wall for balance as the floor dipped under his weight. The ground beneath the wreck was uneven, soft enough that the ship's mass had sunken into it slightly. Aderin moved through the corridor, ignoring the sparks still spraying from torn conduits in the ceiling. He found Saria half buried beneath a fallen support brace, her armor cracked in 3 places, but her chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. He braced himself, lifted the bent alloy and dragged her free. Her eyes fluttered. Still breathing, he whispered to himself, relieved beyond measure. Then he forced himself to keep moving. One by one he found the others. Navigator Raylan with a dislocated shoulder and a bleeding forehead. Engineer Tovan trapped behind a collapsed panel, coughing but alive. Volunteer Keeper Lurine unconscious but intact. He counted 5 breathing forms including himself, 4 missing, 4 he refused to assume dead. Not yet. His helmet display flickered, distorted by the crash, but still functional enough to pull up a proximity scan. The terrain outside was dense, too dense for long-range readings, but he could detect the faint hum of something large moving beyond the nearby tree line, something mechanical, something searching. The enemy would not have let a falling craft escape notice. They would be sweeping the area, hunting survivors. He would not let his people be taken. He dragged Saria to a patch of stable ground outside the breach and laid her gently against a root structure that curled upward like a half-formed ribcage. As he breathed the alien air, Aderin felt a strange pulling sensation deep in his lungs. The analyzer in his suit reported normal oxygen levels, but also trace compounds it could not identify. Yet his breathing remained steady. Whatever floated in the air had not harmed him, or perhaps it was harming him in a way he could not yet detect. That thought simmered uneasily in his mind as he surveyed the landscape. The jungle was alive with bioluminescence, not just in static patterns, but in slow cycling pulses, as if the entire ecosystem had a heartbeat. Tendrils of glowing spores drifted lazily upward from flowers shaped like spiraling wells. Insects, if they were insects, darted through the air on crystalline wings that refracted the light from the canopy into tiny rainbows. Vines glowed brighter when he stepped near them, reacting to his presence. Everything here seemed aware, watching, listening, waiting. It reminded him of the enemy ships, those organic hulls that bent and flexed like living muscle, their surfaces lined with sensory pits instead of metal plating. Had this jungle been created by the enemy, or had the enemy been created by this jungle? The thought chilled him. He shook it off. Speculation would not help now. Survival would. He activated his emergency beacon, boosting its strength by rewiring a damaged power cell. A risky move, but necessary. If the beacon reached the orbiting fleet, rescue could come, assuming the fleet still existed. Assuming the attack did not devastate everything. Aderin swallowed, refusing to let despair take root. Humanity had survived too much, fought too hard. They would not vanish here. A soft sound behind him made him spin. Something moved between the trees, tall, slender, and disturbingly graceful. Its silhouette resembled the armored shape of the enemy warriors, yet not identical. Its limbs were too elongated. Its spine curved unnaturally. Its gait was uneven, as though it was learning how to walk with a borrowed body. Aderin dropped into a defensive stance and drew his sidearm, the barrel glowing faintly as it powered on. The figure stepped closer, and the canopy light revealed a face unlike any he had seen. It was not metal, not bone, not flesh. It was a mask of shimmering fibers that rippled with shifting colors. Beneath it, faintly visible through torn places, were traces of human features, eyes glassy and unfocused, lips twisted in a grotesque imitation of a smile. Aderin felt his stomach twist. This was one of the missing crew, twisted, reshaped, claimed. Aderin's grip tightened, he aimed, he hesitated. He did not want to shoot his own crew member, no matter what had happened. The creature tilted its head, the fiber mask rippling as if responding to an unseen wind. Then it lunged. Aderin fired. The blast struck the creature's torso, knocking it backward into a mass of thick vines. The vines reacted instantly, curling around the falling body, pulling it deeper into the undergrowth. The creature convulsed, thrashing once, then went still. The vines pulsed with a rising glow, almost feeding on the fallen form. Aderin backed away, shaken not by the threat, but by the implication. The enemy's corruption was not limited to the battlefield. It extended into the surrounding environment. It consumed anything it touched. It shaped whatever remained into weapons. He returned to his crew. The others were waking, one by one, groaning in pain and confusion. Seria pushed herself upright and blinked hard. "Commander, how long?" He shook his head. "Minutes, maybe an hour, hard to tell." Tovan surveyed the wreckage and let out a low groan. "Ship is done. If the enemy did not follow us down, they will soon." Raylan muttered something under his breath about cursed luck. Keeper Lurine remained silent, his gaze drifting to the glowing foliage as though he sensed something in it that the others could not. Aderin remembered how sensitive Lurine was to bioelectric patterns. His people long believed that living structures, even those beyond human understanding, carried echoes of intent. Whether or not that was superstition, Aderin did not know. "We move out," Aderin said. "Find higher ground, set up a defensive perimeter. If my emergency beacon gets through, we need a clear signal path." Seria nodded weakly. "And if the enemy finds us first," Aderin's jaw tightened, "then we make them regret it." They retrieved what gear they could salvage: ration packs, medkits, a pair of power cells, one functional drone, 3 half-charged rifles, and a flare launcher with a cracked barrel. It would have to do. The jungle swallowed them quickly, the bioluminescent vines shifting aside like wary serpents as they passed. Every sound echoed strangely, as if the trees whispered faint reflections of their footsteps. The deeper they went, the more Aderin felt the air change. It grew warmer, denser, almost humming. The spores drifting through the air clung faintly to their armor, leaving glowing specks like stardust. Lurine paused often, touching certain roots or leaves, frowning as though hearing something the others could not. They traveled until the foliage thinned enough to reveal a ridge rising ahead. From its crest, Aderin hoped to see clear sky, maybe even their fleet. But as they climbed, the humming in the air intensified. The vines coiled more aggressively around the trunks. Aderin felt the hair on his arms prickle beneath his suit. Something was building here: energy, tension, purpose. The ridge came into full view, and with it, a structure that made all of them freeze. It was not natural, not entirely. A massive trunk rose from the top of the ridge, spiraling upward like a single colossal strand of grown wood fused with metallic fibers. Its surface pulsed with rhythmic waves of blue and violet light. Around it coiled thick vines shaped almost deliberately, forming lattices like rib cages or exoskeletal plates. The entire construct hummed with power. It reminded Aderin of the enemy ships, living architecture grown for a function, not merely beauty. Tovan whispered, "What in all the world is that?" Before anyone could answer, the ground beneath their feet pulsed, not shook, pulsed, as though the earth itself beat like a heart. Lurine staggered back, clutching his head. "It is speaking," he whispered hoarsely. "It is calling something." Aderin reached for him. "What is it calling?" Lurine's eyes widened. "Us." Before the crew could respond, a deafening shriek tore through the air, shaking the glowing leaves from the canopy. The scanning drone beeped wildly, detecting incoming movement, fast, numerous, coordinated. Aderin whipped around in time to see dark shapes descending from the trees, their limbs contorted like the twisted crew member he had encountered earlier. They moved with jerking, unnatural speed, latching onto branches and trunks as if pulled by invisible strings. Their faces were masked by the same rippling fiber material that distorted their features, but the bodies beneath were unmistakably human. "What have they done?" Sarah whispered in horror. Aderin had no answer. He only had time to shout, "Defensive formation, back to the ridge." The corrupted figures attacked with shrieks that vibrated the very air. Aderin fired, his rifle blasts illuminating the twisted trunks with bursts of light. Raylan swung his rifle butt into one that dropped too close, knocking it backward into a cluster of glowing flowers that shriveled upon contact. Tovan set a charge and detonated it near the densest group, sending shredded plant matter erupting upward like wet shrapnel. But for every fallen attacker, two more emerged from the foliage. They were being driven toward the towering organic structure, whether they wished to go or not. Aderin realized it too late. The vines at the structure's base uncoiled like awakening serpents, reacting to their presence. Aderin tried to steer the group around them, but the swarm of twisted attackers formed a wall behind them, forcing them forward. Lureen screamed suddenly and collapsed as the vines surged, wrapping around his legs and pulling him toward the base of the trunk. Aderin grabbed his arm, but the vines were too strong. They dragged Lureen into a narrow slit in the structure's surface. His scream cut off instantly. Sarah cried out, lunging after him, but Aderin stopped her. "No, we cannot go inside. We regroup. We fight outward." The vines retracted, the slit ceiling shut as though it had never existed. Aderin's breath trembled with rage. He would not lose another. Not like that, but the jungle had other plans. The humming intensified, resonating in their bones. The vines rose higher, forming walls around them. The attackers halted, dropping to their knees in eerie unison as the trunk's lights pulsed faster. The ridge trembled. Aderin raised his rifle, not sure what good it would do. The massive trunk split open vertically, revealing a hollow interior that glowed with swirling lights and suspended spores. Within it floated a shape, human-shaped, but larger, its limbs elongated and its torso encased in a shell of living metal that shifted like liquid scales. Its face was a perfect mask of woven fibers. It hung motionless, suspended by tendrils that extended from the walls. Then it opened its eyes. Aderin felt a cold shock run through him. Those eyes were not alien. They were unmistakably human. The figure spoke without moving its lips. The voice vibrated directly inside their minds, layered with echoes like many voices speaking as one. "Children of the lost world," it said, "we welcome you." Aderin lifted his rifle. Sarah did the same. Raylan cursed under his breath. Tovan stepped backward, nearly tripping over a root. The figure's expression did not change, but the vines tightened around the ridge, sealing every path of escape. "You fight us," the figure said, "yet you are us. You are the fragments that refused the union. You are the pieces that chose separation, but we remember what you have forgotten." Aderin felt a pounding in his skull, as though something was trying to push into his thoughts. He gritted his teeth, resisting it. "I do not know what you are," he said, "but you will not take any more of my people." The figure tilted its head. "We do not take, we restore, we return. You have been broken for so long that you no longer recognize the shape you once shared with us." Tovan snarled, "You are no kin of ours." "On the contrary," the figure replied, "we are the origin, you are the fracture." The vines surged suddenly, wrapping around Aderin's ankles and wrists before he could dodge. Sarah screamed and tried to cut the vines away, but they tightened with impossible strength, rooting him in place. His rifle fell from his grasp. Raylan and Tovan rushed to help but were seized as well, tendrils coiling around their limbs. The figure floated closer, its masked face inches from Aderin's. "We do not seek your end, we seek your reunion. The union that was broken when your kind fled the great melding. You became wanderers, violent, lost. But now, at last, you return to the cradle." Aderin strained against the vines, fury burning through every vein. "We are not yours. Not yet," the figure whispered. The vines lifted him toward the opening in the trunk. The light inside swirled faster, pulsing like a living heart. Seria's voice cut through the chaos. "Aderin, Commander, stay awake, stay." Her shout ended in a cry as vines pulled her backward. Aderin roared her name, fighting with everything he had, wrenching his arm free for a single second. He reached toward her. Then the light consumed him. Commander Aderin expected pain. He expected the searing agony of assimilation, the crushing weight of alien violation, the tearing apart of thought and identity. Instead, when the light swallowed him, he felt suspended, neither falling nor rising. Neither awake nor unconscious. His mind drifted in a warm, slow current. Memories unfurled around him like banners in a silent wind, training drills, starship corridors, the weight of armor plates on his shoulders, the voices of his crew echoing through comms, the crackle of weapons during his first deployment, the pride swelling in his chest when the fleet awarded him command. These were not hallucinations. They were perfect recollections, sharper than they had ever been, as if his thoughts were being pulled apart strand by strand, each scrutinized and polished before being reassembled. Then another presence brushed against him. At first it felt like a soft ripple, but quickly it became more deliberate, probing the edges of his awareness. It did not strike or intrude. It regarded, measured, considered. It was enormous, vast in a way that only something ancient or collective could be. Aderin felt its attention settle on him the way a predator might observe prey, though there was no malice in it. It simply existed with an absolute confidence that dwarfed his own. He forced his eyes open. The world resolved into luminous spirals. He floated inside a spherical chamber, suspended by coils of light rather than physical restraints. The walls were translucent and appeared to breathe, expanding and contracting in slow rhythm. Pulses of color ran through them, blues, purples, deep crimson, each shifting into the next like phases of living thought. Below him, the vines formed a nest-like structure that glowed with a soft internal luminescence. Embedded in its center was Lurine. His body lay motionless, but threads of light ran along the contours of his skull, weaving patterns across his skin. His chest rose and fell gently. He was alive, but altered, changed or changing. Aderin reached for him instinctively, but the light that held him firmed around his limbs, keeping him suspended. Something stirred. The masked figure that had confronted them outside drifted through the chamber's crystalline membrane as though passing through water. Its woven fiber face flickered, its body trailing thin filaments that merged with the chamber's living walls. Its eyes glowed with an unsettling calm. Aderin glared at it. "Release him." The figure regarded him with an expression that was not exactly emotion, but something like curiosity. "He is safe," it said. Its voice echoed directly through the chamber, resonating in Aderin's bones. "He has been chosen for communion." "Communion?" Aderin spat. "You mean subjugation, corruption." "I saw what you did to the others." "You saw the incomplete, the disrupted," the figure replied. "The malformed echoes of a process interrupted by resistance or injury. But full communion is not pain, it is restoration." Aderin struggled against the energy holding him. It neither yielded nor tightened. "If you think I will allow you to touch my crew, you are mistaken." "You misunderstand," the figure said. "Your permission is not required. The choice was made long before your arrival." Aderin snarled. "By whom?" "By the shard of your kind that broke away from us eons ago." A cold feeling slid down Aderin's spine. "Explain." The figure drifted closer. Its mask rippled, shifting into faint impressions of human faces, cheeks, brows, lips, each fading before it fully formed, as if the being were trying on human identity and discarding it with each attempt. "Your species is not solitary," it said. "You are one part of a whole. Your ancestors fled the melding that bound our kind into a unified consciousness. They chose separation. They chose to isolate themselves within finite bodies, finite minds, finite lives. They believed it would preserve something of their individuality, and so they ran. They colonized distant worlds, fractured further over generations, birthed cultures that no longer remember their source. Aderin's breath caught. The notion was absurd, offensive, impossible. Yet the being spoke with certainty, not persuasion. "We did not seek you," it continued. "You returned to us. When your fleets expanded, when your ambitions reached beyond your memories, you crossed the boundary into our reclaimed domain. And so we came, not to conquer, to retrieve." Aderin barked a bitter laugh. "You slaughtered thousands. How is that retrieval?" The masked figure paused. For the first time, it seemed to reflect, not react. "We defend ourselves from aggression. Those who entered our space attacked without warning. Their fire burned our gardens. Their machines disrupted our harmonies. They forced echoes of us to wake in violence rather than welcome. Our response was protection, not extermination." Aderin felt a hot surge of anger. "You boarded our ships. You invaded our colonies. We reclaimed what was lost." The chamber pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. "Every human we find carries within them the dormant memory of unity. Their minds respond instinctively to our presence. They seek connection. Some subconsciously reach out, even before they understand why. Others resist only because they fear annihilation of self. But the self is not erased. It expands." Aderin's heart hammered. "You are rewriting them." The figure moved closer until its mask hovered inches from his face. "We are revealing what already exists within them." Aderin's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "I will never join you." "That remains to be seen," the being murmured. A new wave of light washed across the chamber. Aderin felt something brush against his thoughts, a featherlight touch, not intrusive but observant. Images flickered across the chamber walls, planets burning, soldiers screaming, the twisted forms of corrupted crew members, the vines dragging bodies into the heart of the forest. Rage surged inside him, and the images scattered, replaced by a shudder running through the chamber. The masked figure floated backward in surprise. "Your mind shields itself," it said, "instinctively stronger than most." Aderin strained against the energy binding him. The glowing strands trembled, a small shift, but enough to startle the figure. It advanced again, weaving its tendrils through the light around him. "Your defiance is admirable, but it changes nothing. You cannot escape what you are." A new voice echoed behind them. "That is where you are wrong." Saraya stepped through the chamber's membrane, her armor scorched, her shoulders heaving with exhaustion. Raylan and Tovan followed close behind her, wielding damaged rifles that flickered with unstable power. They had forced their way into this place. Aderin felt a fierce surge of relief. "How did you find—" "No time," Saraya snapped. "Hold on." The masked figure turned, filaments spreading like a fan. "You cannot be here," it said. "This sanctum is not meant for the unjoined." Tovan fired. The blast struck the wall behind the figure, but the shockwave rippled through the chamber like a stone thrown into water. The translucent walls quivered. Pulses of energy shook the vines below. Lurin's body stirred. His eyes opened and glowed. Aderin's heart lurched. "Lurin," the keeper rose slowly, suspended by the threads of light woven through his skin. When he spoke, his voice was layered, distorted. "Commander, you should not fight this." Saraya froze. "Lurin, look at me. Do you know where you are?" He did not answer, or if he did, the answer was not meant for her. "The Union calls. We are meant to return." His gaze drifted to Aderin. "You feel it too, even now. You resist, but you hear the echo." Aderin forced himself to meet his gaze. "I hear nothing but your voice being stolen." "It is being restored," Lurin said. "All of us were pieces of something greater. You have carried the emptiness without knowing its name. But here, that emptiness can be filled." Saraya took a step forward. "They infected you." "They awakened me," he replied. The masked figure floated beside him. "He understands what you do not. The return is natural. I will show you." Aderin's bindings flickered. Saraya saw it too. "Commander, now." Aderin twisted his body with every ounce of strength he possessed. The glowing strands snapped, the energy dispersing in a bright shockwave that momentarily darkened the chamber. He fell heavily onto the vine-woven floor just as Raylan fired into the ceiling. The chamber shuddered, its membrane cracking like eggshell glass. The masked figure screamed, not with sound, but with a psychic shockwave that sent all of them staggering. Vines erupted from the walls, lashing out violently. One wrapped around Raylan's leg, dragging him backward. Saria lunged and chopped through it with a salvaged plasma cutter. Tovan hurled a charge into the nest below, buying them seconds as the explosion ripped through the glowing vines. The masked figure's voice roared across the chamber. "You endanger what you do not understand. You threaten the return of your kind. Our patience ends." Aderin grabbed Saria's arm and shouted, "We have to move, now." Lureen descended from the air behind them, floating like a marionette pulled by invisible strings. "Do not flee. You belong here. You belong with us." Aderin looked at him, truly looked, and felt something cold settle in his chest. The man he knew was gone, absorbed, rewritten, or perhaps worse, convinced. Aderin turned away. There would be time for grief later if they survived. Raylan forced open a crack in the chamber membrane. Through it lay a narrow passage lit by faint pulses of blue. Beyond that, the living structure trembled, beginning to collapse inward as if trying to consume them or prevent their escape. The masked figure surged toward them. Aderin shouted, "Go!" They dove through the crack. The structure howled behind them, and the chamber exploded into light.